With the recent release of the Star Wars Jedi Survivor trailer, I thought it would be a great idea to show you how Two Guys Getting Fired gave us the best Star Wars game of the last decade, and most importantly, how this story can show you how to make your creative projects even better. Let's jump into it. Before we talk about the two guys that got fired, I need to give you some backstory. In 2013, Electronic Arts, one of the world's biggest video game publishers, bought the 10-year exclusive rights to produce Star Wars video games. Typically, publishers provide the funding, marketing, and distribution for games and outsource the actual making of the game to video game developers. Think of the publisher as the owner of a restaurant and the developers as the cook who makes the food. With a huge and loyal fan base, the Star Wars license would guarantee that EA laughs all the way to the bank. EA decided to play things safe by remaking a fan favorite, Star Wars Battlefront, a popular third-person shooter game launched in 2004. The new game was scheduled to launch in 2015 to coincide with the upcoming Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens. Unfortunately, EA's dreams of swimming in money dried up very quickly. Star Wars Battlefront 2015 was a huge disappointment, with users feeling cheated as they paid full price for what seemed like half a game. Issues with the game during the launch included no single-player campaign, gameplay that was derivative of another game that the developer, EA Dice, had created previously, called Battlefield, 3. Extremely weak lightsaber gameplay, and 4. Limited game modes. Over the years, EA Dice enhanced the game with downloadable content, DLC, but all the good stuff was still kept behind a paywall. Battlefront 2 was launched 2 years later and was another disaster due to its loot box game mechanics that sacrificed an excellent video game experience for monetization. EA had another Star Wars project in the works at Visceral Games. This studio was commissioned to create a single-player third-person action game. They even had the person who created the Uncharted franchise, Amy Hennig, but this met an untimely demise because EA was convinced that customers only wanted multiplayer live service games. EA had seen less than satisfactory results with 2 of its developer studios. Would they strike out with the third? Now, back to our 2 guys who got fired. In 2002, Vince Zampella and Jason West co-founded a video game studio called Infinity Ward, which became a subsidiary of another publisher called Activision. Under Vince and Jason's leadership, they kicked off a small franchise you might have heard of, named Call of Duty. To date, Call of Duty has sold more than 425 million copies and generated over $30 billion in revenue. In 2010, Vince and Jason were shafted by Activision and fired because the publisher didn't want to give them more creative control and pay them their deserved bonuses. They left to start Respawn Entertainment in the same year, with 90% of the team at Infinity Ward jumping ship to join them. They entered the EA Partner Program, a special fund that supports independent video developers to create exciting and risky projects, and created the now famous Titanfall video games. This franchise led to the creation of the game Apex Legends, which has generated over $2 billion in revenue from 2019 till date. In 2014, Respawn hired Stig Asmussen, the game director for God of War 3, to assemble a team to create a new intellectual property. Working with just 5 people at the time, Stig put together a pitch to EA for a Star Wars game which was unfortunately rejected. He and his team then went back to the drawing board and proceeded to create a brand new intellectual property that caught the interest of EA. The publisher was keen on converting it to a Star Wars game. In line with the team culture at Respawn, the CEO, Vince Zampella, asked this team if they wanted to keep the project as an original IP or turn it into a Star Wars game. The team unanimously opted to explore a galaxy far, far away. And thus, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was launched in November 2019 to critical and commercial acclaim. In the first 2 weeks of sale, it had the fastest selling digital launch of any Star Wars game. By the end of June 2021, the game had attracted more than 20 million players, got nominated for 13 awards, and won 5. So why was this game so successful when the others failed? 1. Respawn understood who they were catering to. This was because they were the customer. Many team members were Star Wars fans and would have sold a kidney for a chance to contribute to the long-standing lore that had shaped their childhoods and careers. For example, Tim Wallace, a senior hard surface artist on the project, God knows what that job title entails, got his first Star Wars toy, a C-3PO figure, over 40 years ago, and this set him on the path to what he is doing today. This game was clearly made by Star Wars fans for Star Wars fans. 2. Because they knew who they were creating for, they were able to create a Star Wars experience, not just a Star Wars video game. This is no surprise considering that one of Respawn's values is finding fun. And I quote it below. Our passion for gameplay inspired the use of the Braille letter R as our logo. It signifies our dedication to making games that feel good to play. We believe that every facet of the gameplay experience should feel just right, and we discover what's fun by constantly playing our games and listening to our community. We listen, we adapt, we find the fun. I have a confession to make. I just played Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order a month ago. The cheapskate in me wasn't willing to pay full price. I saw an opportunity to pay less than $10 for it, and I took it. However, after playing it, I would gladly have parted with the whole sum. As someone who grew up on Star Wars, this game made me feel like I was in the Star Wars universe. From the flawed and relatable characters to the unique intergalactic vessels and the recreation of iconic locations, it took me back to my days of childlike wonder. It was a priceless experience that made it easy to overlook the video game's flaws, because by no means is it a perfect game. In summary, here are a couple of lessons that we as creatives can learn. 1. It's not enough to spot a huge opportunity, but understand the expectations of the audience tied to it. Empathy will significantly improve the quality of our creative projects. 2. Empathy will lead us to a point where we can connect deeply with our audience and take them to familiar places they haven't visited in a while, or to new experiences that can completely transform their lives. And that's a wrap. Let me know how you've used empathy in your projects and the difference it made to your audience. I can't wait to hear from you.